Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a rugged rancher's peaceful life is shattered by a meddling suburban HOA and its clipboard-wielding queen, he doesn't get mad, he gets even. What follows is a wild, hilarious standoff between Bull's bureaucracy and one man who won't back down on his own land. It's funny how quiet can fool you. I was leaning against the railing of my porch that morning, coffee in hand, letting the stillness of the hills soak into my bones. 120 acres of rolling pasture land stretched out before me, dotted with scrub pine, dry grass, and the slow shifting shapes of 6 of my rodeo bulls. They weren't aggressive, not unless you were dumb enough to challenge them, but they made their presence known, just like me. I'm Jackson Brandt. I'm 49 years old. Ex-cavalry, honorably discharged, now raising bulls and horses out here on the edge of Elkhorn County, Colorado. My family's owned this land since my grandfather carved out the first fence post. And while the world out there gets itself more tangled every year, this land, this ranch, stays the same. Simple, quiet, mine. Except lately it hadn't been so quiet. A few years back, some developer got cute with the ridge just east of my north line. They called it Clear Ridge Estates. Modern houses stacked like Lego bricks, every lawn chemically identical, every neighbor nosy as hell. The folks up there founded themselves a homeowners association, the kind that treats overgrown grass like felony assault. I kept out of their way, figured they'd return the favor. I figured wrong. It started small. Notes. Letters, actually. Official-looking envelopes stuffed with passive-aggressive print about community visual standards and animal odor mitigation. First time, I laughed and tossed it in the stove. Second time, I wrote return to sender and mailed it back. The third time, that one came with a name. Karen Millbrook, 61. Blonde hair that never moved, voice that never lowered, a clipboard like a badge. I met her face-to-face one afternoon by the fence line. She'd marched down the ridge in sandals, as if cow pies were beneath her notice. "You must be Mr. Brandt," she'd said, not asking, not smiling. "I am. I'm Karen Millbrook, president of the Clear Ridge Estates HOA. We've received several complaints." "Stop right there," I said. "I'm not part of your HOA. This is private land." "Oh, we're aware," she replied, not missing a beat. "But we consider ourselves a regional influence, and your activities, livestock noise, fence disrepair, visible manure piles, they're disrupting the harmony of our community." I stared at her a long moment. "You hiked half a mile down my hill to tell me cows poop." She blinked once. "We're simply requesting cooperation, a visual barrier, possibly redirecting livestock away from the eastern pasture. Perhaps we could provide an approved fence contractor." "I warned you once, Ms. Millbrook," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not in your club. I don't answer to your rules. Don't come on my land again." She tilted her head, like I was a slow student. "Community is about mutual respect, Mr. Brandt. If you're not willing to engage, perhaps you shouldn't live so close to civilization." I watched her walk back up that hill with a stiffness that looked half pride, half arthritis. I figured that'd be the last of it. That she'd make a note on her clipboard and direct her HOA energy toward somebody's mailbox height or wind chime pitch. But it didn't stop. A week later, I found a laminated sign zip-tied to my north gate. Notice, unregulated agricultural operation, proceed with caution. No author, no logo, just the whiff of HOA smug. Then came the drone. I caught it zipping over my pasture, buzzing low over the bulls like a damn wasp. I shot it down with a rock salt slug. If they wanted to call the sheriff, let 'em. He's eaten my ribs. The last straw, though, wasn't a drone or a letter. It was the meeting. I'd taken my truck into town for supplies, fencing wire, salt blocks, a few jugs of diesel, and bumped into an old neighbor, Greg Holloway. He lived in Clear Ridge now, used to raise sheep before they built over his fields. "Hey," Greg said, looking nervous. You hear about the thing Karen's organizing?" "What thing?" "She's calling it the Clear Ridge Camping Weekend. Says it's a community building event. Outreach to local homeowners. Said they're setting up on the ridge and maybe down toward your hill." She invited people to camp on my pasture. I asked slowly. Greg rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, she says there's no posted signs and the land's not marked. Figured it was part of the unincorporated county space or something. You got signs up, right?" Of course I do. Yeah, well, you might want to check again. When I got home, I rode the fence line. Every no trespassing sign on the north and east edges, torn down, bolt holes still fresh. The gate latch, cut, clean slice like it had been done with bolt cutters. That night, I sat in my chair with a tumbler of rye and stared out over the dark. I watched the ridgeline like I was back in a watchtower, and I knew one thing, deep in my gut. This wasn't over. Not by a damn sight. I was gone for one night. Just one goddamn night. Left the ranch Saturday morning to help my buddy Wes out in rifle. His mare had gotten tangled in barbed wire, and the nearest vet was on call. Figured I'd stay the night, get a beer or two in, come back fresh Sunday morning. My assistant Tyler was on watch, kid's green but good with the bulls, and I trusted him to feed and check the gates. What I didn't count on was war being declared in my absence. I didn't even make it to the porch before Tyler came sprinting out of the barn like his pants were on fire. His ball cap was crooked, shirt soaked in sweat, eyes wide. "Jackson, it's bad," he panted. "Real bad. You need to come see this." He pointed toward the east pasture. I drove the ATV out to the rise above the fence line, and my jaw locked up. My goddamn land looked like Coachella for suburbanites. Tents everywhere. At least 50 of them. Some family-sized monstrosities, others neon pop-ups clustered like ticks. SUVs, crossovers, even a goddamn food truck parked just inside the boundary. Kids running around with glow sticks. Lawn chairs, Bluetooth speakers, dogs off leash. A makeshift stage had been set up near the creek bed, with a banner strung between two crooked PVC pipes. Clear Ridge Camping Weekend. Together we thrive. I couldn't move for a second, just stared. And there she was, standing on a plastic riser in a crisp white blouse and slacks like she was giving a TED Talk. Karen Milbrook, grinning like she'd founded a country. I pulled out my binoculars. She had a goddamn megaphone. "Welcome neighbors and unity partners," she was saying. "Today, we celebrate what it means to live together, not apart, to build community that transcends boundaries. After all, boundaries are just lines someone drew a long time ago." That line, I would later learn, was actually quoted in the event program. Printed, laminated. I gripped the handlebars until my knuckles cracked. Tyler stood beside me, breathing like he'd just run a marathon. They came in around noon yesterday, said they had permission, said it was public land now, a part of some HOA partnership initiative. I tried to call, but they blocked the gate. One guy told me I was trespassing. They what? Yeah, said they had temporary rights of access for the weekend, that it was voted on. They've been putting up signs too, fake ones. I took a slow breath, counted to 5. Then I started driving. I didn't head straight for the crowd. I took the outer loop, the long way around the ridgeline, and sure enough, the outer gate had been forced open, the latch cut clean, chain left on the ground. The old private property sign had been replaced with a fresh laminated printout that read, "Event Access, HOA Guests Welcome, Land Use, Authorized by Community Charter, Section 8. There is no Section 8, not in any charter I've seen. Because this isn't an HOA lot. It's mine. Taxed, deeded, and registered in Elkhorn County since 1937. I took photos, license plates, flag colors on the tents. I even filmed a guy in flip-flops letting his golden retriever take a dump 3 feet from my stock trough. Then I turned off the camera and just watched. They were treating it like a resort. Grills going, hammocks between the pine trees. Kids doing sack races across what used to be a bull run. One lady even brought a generator. She was using it to power a sound system playing smooth jazz. I saw Karen again. Now she had a headset microphone. "We are reclaiming space, friends," she said, arms lifted like a preacher. "We're proving that harmony doesn't need walls, that open land is a gift to be shared, not hoarded." Someone in the crowd cheered. Another popped a bottle of champagne. And that's when I turned the ATV around and headed home. I didn't yell, didn't drive into the crowd, didn't fire off a warning shot, though Lord knows my trigger finger was itchy. I got home, parked the rig, and poured myself a glass of water. Then I walked to the barn, took out my drone, and sent it up. The footage was glorious. Full aerial sweep. I got plate numbers, tent placement, unauthorized fire pits, trampled grass, and a direct visual of 2 dumbasses trying to string fairy lights between my fence posts. They'd snapped the top rail. I made 3 backup copies. Tyler stood next to me, silent, watching the screen. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked. I didn't answer at first. Then I said, "They wanted access. Let's give it to them." I didn't sleep that night. Not out of anger, though I had plenty of that, but because I was thinking, planning, calculating just how many lines someone had to cross before they deserved to meet a horned reality check. Come sunrise, I saddled up my old mare, Whiskey, and rode the fence line again. Not a single sign had been restored. The fake community access posters were still flapping in the morning wind. My gate still sat bent and broken where they'd cut the chain, and fresh tire tracks carved up the grass like a parade had marched through overnight. They were still there. More tents now. I counted at least 60. Someone had set up folding tables near the creek, and a group of kids were doing yoga to pan flute music. A few early risers were sipping kombucha out of mason jars, smiling like they were in a wellness retreat. And Karen. Dear God. Karen was holding what looked like a sunrise intentions circle. She was barefoot, barefoot. I went back to the barn, walked past the stables, past the feed room, past the tractor shed, and into the far paddock. The bulls were standing there, slow-moving shadows in the mist. 6 of them, all mine, pure muscle. Not angry, not dangerous unless pushed, but enough to send your average HOA warrior straight into therapy. I opened the gate. Not a word. Not a sound. Just the rattle of the chain and the groan of metal on hinges. I watched as the first one, Big Rusty, looked up, snorted, and lumbered out onto the gravel path. The others followed, like a damn procession of doom. I didn't drive them, didn't whip or prod, just walked behind as they made their way toward the east pasture, their pasture, the one now covered in nylon tents and protein bars and wine spritzers. The bulls moved slow at first, cautious. Then the scent hit them. Something shifted. They picked up pace. I stopped at the ridge, leaned against the fence post, and took out my phone, pressed record, and waited. At first, no one noticed. The campers were too busy meditating or frying organic eggs on propane burners. It wasn't until Rusty wandered between 2 tents, nosing a cooler full of hummus packets, that someone screamed. The dominoes fell fast. A man in khakis tried to shoo Rusty with a rolled-up brochure. Rusty, in return, snorted and knocked over his tent with a gentle flick of the head. Someone else saw that and panicked, yelling, "They're loose. They let the bulls out," which wasn't entirely accurate, but I appreciated the drama. Chaos erupted. People ran in every direction. Kids shrieked. Folding chairs went flying. One woman tripped into a grill and nearly set her blouse on fire. Someone tried to hide inside a porta potty. The door didn't close in time. One guy, I swear to God, tried to film himself doing a TikTok dance in front of the bulls. He got knocked flat when Rusty brushed past him. The sound was incredible. Screaming, mooing, a Bluetooth speaker still blaring Enya. I watched as tents collapsed, tables flipped, dogs slipped their leashes. A Subaru backed into a fire pit trying to escape. Another car spun out in the mud near the gate and stalled. Karen? Oh, she was still holding her megaphone, yelling into it like the bulls would listen. "Stay calm. This is under control. Animals respond to energy." She stepped on a thermos and twisted her ankle mid-sentence. One of the bulls, Jasper, wandered over and licked the side of her megaphone. She screamed and fell backwards into a tub of kale salad. It lasted less than 15 minutes. By the end, the campground looked like it had been hit by a hurricane sponsored by Wrangler. Tarps flapping, coolers overturned, marshmallows floating in the creek. Cars speeding off the hill, some dragging tent poles still hooked to their bumpers. And there, in the middle of the wreckage, stood Karen Millbrook, mud on her knees, grass in her hair, holding a megaphone like a weapon and shrieking at no one in particular, "This is a terrorist attack. We're calling the FBI. This is a federal incident." I turned off my phone, smiled, and walked back to the barn to feed the horses. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. I figured that was the end of it. They'd scattered. The pasture was empty, save for a few twisted tent poles, half a yoga mat, and a lonely flip-flop buried in cow manure. I'd even started mending the eastern fence by that afternoon. The bulls were calm, sunbathing like retirees after a long workout. Peace had returned for about 18 hours. The next morning, I was nursing a sore back and a cup of black coffee when I heard tires crunching on gravel. A white SUV rolled up to the front gate. Sleek, clean, and aggressively out of place. 2 people stepped out. One wore slacks too tight for breathing and carried a briefcase. The other had a clipboard and the expression of someone about to demand fresh linens in the desert. "Mr. Brandt?" the briefcase asked, already walking toward me like he owned the damn ranch. Depends, I said. You selling something or serving something? He smiled. You've been officially served. He handed me a thick envelope. I didn't even open it at first. I just watched them get back in their vehicle and drive off without another word. Entitlement has a smell. Their SUV left a trail of it. Inside the envelope, a class action lawsuit filed by the Clear Ridge Estates Homeowners Association on behalf of 52 individuals who attended the Unity camping event. Their list of complaints was impressive in scope and delusion: reckless endangerment, intentional release of wild livestock, emotional trauma, property damage, including tents, electronics, 2 cell phones, and irreparable damage to a designer handbag. 1 count of threat to public peace under some obscure HOA interpretation of a county ordinance they had no authority over. There were even claims that I unleashed the animals with malicious intent and that I used livestock as instruments of psychological warfare. I laughed out loud. The paperwork actually described the bulls as unrestrained biological hazards. Karen's signature was right there on the final page. Underlined. I called my lawyer, Vince Delgado. He's the kind of guy who files motions with one hand and eats beef jerky with the other. Jackson, he said after 5 minutes of reading, this thing's flimsier than a paper napkin in a thunderstorm. Can I countersue? I asked. Oh, hell yes, he said, already typing. Trespass, property damage, unlawful assembly, maybe even unlicensed commercial activity. Didn't they charge folks for the event? I remembered the signs. Family campsite. $200 donation suggested. They did, I confirmed. Flat rate per tent. Well then, Vince said, they ran a rogue event on your land and charged money for it. That's operating without a permit. And we've got drone footage, don't we? Crystal clear, I said. Plus license plates, timestamps, and footage of Karen trying to spiritually dominate a bull with a megaphone. He whistled. This is gonna be fun. He filed the countersuit the next day, direct to the Elkhorn County Circuit Court. We claimed illegal trespass by over 50 individuals, vandalism of fencing and gates, soil damage to grazing land, endangering livestock, operating a commercial event without county permits, fraudulent representation of land access rights. We attached everything: drone video, Tyler's written statement, my GoPro footage, veterinary documentation stating the bulls were trained, tagged, non-aggressive, and in compliance with all USDA livestock classifications. Then Vince added the best part, a formal request for land ownership verification to legally establish whose land had been used. That's when things shifted. 3 days later, I got a call from the Elkhorn County Clerk's office. Mr. Brandt, the clerk said, sounding faintly amused. Just confirming that the land in question, Parcel 38B East, including the lower ridgeline, is registered solely to your name. Tax ID ending in 7903. That's correct, I said. And just to clarify, she continued, you've been paying property tax on that parcel for 31 years. Yep, there was a pause. You may want to attend the preliminary hearing in person. Something tells me it's gonna get loud. I hung up and went back outside. The bulls were asleep in the sun, snoring like old engines. Tyler was hauling hay. He glanced up. You look like you just won something. I nodded. Oh, I did. Karen's about to lose everything she thinks she owns. I walked into the Elkhorn County Courthouse wearing jeans, a flannel shirt, and a leather jacket that had seen more trails than the inside of any courtroom. My boots were dusty, my hat was clean, and I brought one thing with me, the folder. Inside it, deed copies, parcel maps, tax receipts, and a notarized letter from the county recorder's office that said, in plain English, this land belongs to Jackson L. Brandt, and has since June 1989. Karen, on the other hand, came in dressed like she was attending a corporate merger. Power suit, patent heels, clippered in one hand, latte in the other. Her attorney was a younger man in a bow tie and too much confidence. He looked like he still got carded buying cough syrup. We didn't say a word to each other, just sat across the aisle, waiting for the hearing to begin. Judge Milner was an old-timer, sharp, no nonsense. A Vietnam vet who probably smelled the same bullshit I did the moment Karen's lawyer started speaking. Your Honor, the bow tie began, we submit that the land in question falls under ambiguous jurisdiction. The Clear Ridge Estates HOA includes a perimeter of shared-use greenbelt space which has, over time, merged visually with the adjacent territory. We believe that through established, non-contested usage, the area used for our event was presumed communal. The judge held up one hand. You're saying you thought it looked like your land, so you used it. Well, Mr. Brandt, the judge turned to me. Do you have proof of ownership? I stood, walked to the bench, and placed my folder down. Deed, tax documents, county survey, zoning map, and a certificate of land use filed 29 years ago. All stamped, all legal, all mine. He opened the folder, took about 12 seconds. This is ironclad, he said. Then he raised an eyebrow at Karen. Mrs. Millbrook, you trespassed. Her mouth twitched. No, Your Honor, she said, all sugar and venom. We acted on information provided by our HOA boundary maps, which clearly show the ridge as part of the Clear Ridge Community Greenbelt. That's when her lawyer laid out their map. Printed on glossy paper, HOA branded in soft pastels. It looked like a theme park brochure. I stared at it. The ridge, my ridge, had been color-coded in pale green with little icons, a tent, a picnic table, and even a musical note for performance space. There were dotted lines going well into my pasture, labeled Unity Commons Expansion Area, pending. HOA vote, pending vote. My ass, Judge Milner leaned forward. Where did this map come from? Karen spoke up. It was drafted by the HOA Planning Committee, ratified during our spring board meeting. The judge held it up like it was a fish he didn't want to touch. Was it submitted to the county land office? No, Your Honor, but... Was it approved by any municipal body? Well, it was voted on internally. Internally doesn't mean legally, he snapped. Then he turned to the clerk. Get the county assessor on the line. I want a registered map comparison ASAP. 30 minutes later, a county cartographer named Darlene walked in with a flat file and an attitude. She unrolled an official topographic survey across the table and pointed with a pen. This is the real boundary, she said. The red line here is the HOA limit. The green shaded area, that's parcel 38B, privately owned by Mr. Brandt. These maps, she held up Karen's HOA fantasy brochure, are not recognized by any zoning authority in the state of Colorado. Dead silence. I watched Karen blink, once, twice. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something, probably we're so screwed. Then Darlene added casually, also, we flagged this during a previous permit request last year. Someone from Clear Ridge submitted a landscape grant application for a shared-use recreational hillside. Said they owned it. The judge narrowed his eyes. You saying someone applied for funding for land they didn't own? Darlene nodded. Yep. Claimed it was unincorporated HOA surplus land. But the parcel ID led straight to Mr. Brandt. I swear I saw Karen's jaw twitch. The judge leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. Well, that changes everything. He paused. Court will reconvene next week. In the meantime, I'm referring this map issue to the county attorney's office for potential fraud investigation. Karen stood up so fast she knocked over her purse. Lipstick, phone, something that looked suspiciously like a gavel-shaped USB stick, all went clattering to the floor. She didn't even look at me as she limped out of the courtroom in those angry little heels. But I watched her go. And I knew, without a doubt, she wasn't just losing a court case anymore. She was about to lose her entire fake empire. I didn't expect the fallout to start so fast. The morning after the hearing, my inbox looked like a battlefield. Emails from news outlets, random neighbors, even someone claiming to be a Freedom of Land influencer wanting to interview me for his podcast. But what caught my eye was a subject line from a name I recognized, Greg Holloway. Greg used to be a sheep farmer before Clear Ridge swallowed up his land and HOA'd his life to death. Now he taught 8th grade math and quietly endured Karen's regime from inside the beast. His message was short. Jackson, things are unraveling fast. You lit a fuse. Thought you should know. I leaned back in my chair and cracked a smile. Later that afternoon, Tyler jogged over holding a stack of mail, eyebrows raised. Hey, you got to see this one. It was a letter, not to me, but addressed to all Clear Ridge homeowners. No HOA header, just a plain font and an unsigned header that read, Emergency Special Meeting, Vote of No Confidence. Apparently someone had finally grown a spine. Word spread like prairie fire. HOA members were whispering, texting, forming little garage groups like high school kids plotting a prom coup. They were scared, not because of me, but because of what Karen had done in their names. Turns out, a few of them had actually paid her directly for the camping event, $200 per tent. Suggested donation, she had called it. One family said she even offered a Unity Weekend VIP experience for an extra $50, which included front row yoga space and a guaranteed communal fire circle slot. Then came the bombshell. One of the attendees, a mother named Bethany Collier, filed a civil claim, not against me, against Karen. Her kid, a 10-year-old named Ryan, had fallen into a shallow gully during the bull rush and sprained his ankle. Nothing major, but Bethany had receipts. Karen's flyers, emails, even a group chat where Karen assured everyone the land is fully cleared and legally secured for community use. Bethany's suit accused Karen of reckless endangerment, misrepresentation, and unlawful collection of event. Fees. More families followed. 2 dads threatened legal action over damaged vehicles. One of them had tried to escape the bulls and ended up halfway submerged in my irrigation ditch. His insurance denied the claim because he was trespassing on private agricultural land. At this point, HOA board members started dropping like flies. First, Vice President Ron Alverson, gone. Then the treasurer, a timid woman named Pam, who posted a Facebook status that simply read, "I was misled. I resign." By Thursday, the Clear Ridge HOA had no functioning leadership, except of course Karen, who refused to step down. She issued a statement, which I read online while eating beef jerky, that claimed, "This is a targeted smear campaign by non-aligned rural extremists attempting to dismantle organized community governance." She really said that. I printed it out and stuck it to my fridge. Then came the real thunder. A county official named Thomas DeWitt called me personally. Calm voice, direct questions. He said the Elkhorn District Attorney's Office had officially opened a case into suspected misuse of public grant funds by the Clear Ridge HOA president. Apparently, Karen had filed several grant applications in the last 3 years. Landscaping subsidies, Greenbelt improvement credits, even a small cultural events grant from the Colorado Department of Community Affairs, all of them based on land she didn't own. They'd approved over $28,000 in funds. And every application used that same pastel brochure map. When the auditors requested GPS verification data, they found obvious forgeries, screenshots copied from Google Earth with lines drawn in Microsoft Paint, basically. Thomas said investigators would be interviewing Karen within the week. I asked if I could send over drone footage and fence damage documentation. He said that would be very helpful. Later that night, I got another message from Greg. "You didn't just win, Jackson. You kicked open the damn gates." I walked out to the corral, leaned against the rail, and watched my bulls chewing cud under the stars. The wind had a sharp edge, but it smelled clean. Karen had wanted a community. Now she had one, just not on her side anymore. They say bureaucracy moves slow, but when it smells blood, it sprints like a greyhound. By the time the 7th day after the hearing rolled around, Clear Ridge Estates was in full collapse mode. Karen tried to hold an emergency HOA board meeting in the clubhouse. Only 3 people showed up, and one of them was there to scream at her. Turns out, several homeowners had received letters from the county, audit notices, requests for interviews. Some were being asked about unauthorized disbursement of funds, others about knowledge of fraudulent permit claims. You could smell the panic from my porch. And then came the unthinkable. Someone leaked the full HOA financial report. It wasn't supposed to be public, but there it was, floating around the local Facebook group, passed from neighbor to neighbor like contraband. Turns out the Unity Camping Weekend had pulled in over $11,000. All in donations, all collected through Karen's personal Venmo account labeled Community Experience. The rage online was biblical. People wanted answers. Then they wanted her head. Local journalists picked it up. A tiny headline at first, "Weekend Retreat Gone Wrong Raises Legal Questions." But it snowballed. Karen tried to go on the defensive, claimed she was being targeted by rural militants, tried to imply I was part of some sovereign citizen group, even went as far as suggesting on a podcast that I coordinated the bull incident as an act of political intimidation, which would have been hilarious if it weren't so stupid. Meanwhile, Vince, my lawyer, was having the time of his life. He filed a motion for damages, real ones, soil compaction loss, fence repairs, vet bills for one of the bulls that sprained a leg when someone left a folding chair in the middle of the pasture. We weren't just countering anymore, we were going on offense. And then came the final blow. The Elkhorn County District Attorney filed formal charges against Karen Milbrook, fraudulent misuse of public funds, forgery of land use documents, criminal trespass with intent to profit, operating a commercial event without permit, obstruction of municipal inquiry, 5 charges, all stacked, all real. And just like that, Karen's carefully constructed suburban dictatorship began crumbling in full view of the public. The sheriff's office showed up at her house, not with guns drawn, this isn't Hollywood, but with clipboards, 2 investigators, and a warrant for all HOA records and communication. Her porch cameras caught the whole thing. She tried to smile, said she was happy to cooperate. The video got 500,000 views in 3 days. Her name became a meme. Unity Karen trended for a while. Some guy even made t-shirts with a cartoon bull kicking over a pastel-colored tent with the caption, "I identify as a biological hazard." The best part? HOA members, the ones she used to boss around, began formally petitioning the county to dissolve the association. Turns out, when your leadership commits fraud and drags you into civil court, your legal liability skyrockets. One smart homeowner dug up a provision in Colorado HOA code that allows for community disbandment via supermajority vote and county confirmation. They got the vote. Sent in the paperwork. Clear Ridge Estates HOA was now officially on life support. And Karen, well, she did what cornered predators do. She lashed out, filed a personal restraining order against me, citing emotional trauma and intimidation via livestock. Claimed she had nightmares of bulls. Her affidavit included a screenshot of my security footage, where I was feeding the animals at sunset, as evidence of proximity-based threat projection. The judge denied it in under 15 minutes. Vince and I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my ribs on the floor. That same evening, the county issued a freeze on the HOA's bank account and sent an official notice. All funds under review, all grant disbursements frozen, all spending halted until the fraud investigation concluded. The HOA was broke. The members were furious, and Karen was now under active criminal investigation. I didn't throw a party, but I did crack open a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for something big. Because sometimes justice doesn't come with a bang. Sometimes it walks in calmly, opens a file, and turns your entire fake empire into mulch. It was 2 months to the day since the Unity camping weekend, and the land had mostly healed. Grass had started to grow back where the tents had flattened it, and the bulls had reclaimed their favorite spots like nothing ever happened. Nature forgets stupidity quicker than people do. The court case wrapped up fast after the criminal charges landed. Karen's HOA lawsuit against me, dismissed in full. The judge called it meritless, retaliatory, and bordering on delusional. Our countersuit settled with damages paid by the HOA's remaining legal reserves. What little hadn't been frozen or drained by defense fees. Karen didn't show up to the last hearing. Her attorney had quit the week before. I heard she'd moved out temporarily, either to a retreat in Sedona or her sister's condo in Omaha, depending on which gossip trail you followed. The county formally dissolved the Clear Ridge HOA the following week. Turns out, when half your membership signs a petition citing corruption, fraud, and public embarrassment, the bureaucrats listen. The board was disbanded, the association shut down, and the remaining responsibilities handed over to the county until a new governance model could be formed, if anyone ever wanted one again. The Clear Ridge website went offline, the Facebook group imploded, and the HOA signs at the entrance? Someone tore them down and spray-painted "No Karen Zone" on the brick wall by the gate. I swear it wasn't me, but I did laugh for a solid 5 minutes when I drove past. Tyler and I rebuilt the eastern gate with reinforced steel posts, new warning signs, and one very special addition, a custom-carved wooden plaque that reads, "Private property. Trespassers will meet the herd." Underneath that, a silhouette of a bull mid-charge. Local reporters came out to do a piece. Farmer fights HOA with bulls, and wins. They filmed me walking the pasture with Big Rusty trotting behind me like a half-ton golden retriever. I didn't say much. Just explained that I believe in fences, freedom, and consequences. That night, I grilled steaks under the stars, whiskey in hand, music low. Peace settled over the land like a familiar blanket. Greg came by. So did a few of the other neighbors. Folks who'd lived in fear of Karen's clipboard for years. We shared ribs and stories, and for once, nobody brought up bylaws or aesthetic violations. "You did something big," Greg said quietly as we watched the sunset bleed across the ridge. I shook my head. "I just opened the gate." He laughed. "Yeah, but you knew what would walk through." He wasn't wrong. Since then, I've had 2 different groups ask me to run for something. One was the county land board, the other some community alliance trying to reclaim ethical representation. I said no to both. I didn't do this to lead anybody. I did it because someone tried to turn my land, my home, into their playground, their stage, their profit machine. And I don't care how many clipboards, committee votes, or pastel-colored maps you throw at me. If you cross my line, you'll damn well know it. Out here, boundaries matter, property matters, truth matters. And if someone forgets that again, well, the Bulls are still here, and they're always ready for round 2.